and my fellow citizens. To a few of us here today, this is a solemn and most momentous occasion, and yet in the history of our nation it is a commonplace occurrence. The orderly transfer of authority as called for in the Constitution routinely takes place, as it has for almost 2 centuries, and few of us stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. Mr. President, I want our fellow citizens to know how much you did to carry on this tradition. By your gracious cooperation in the transition process, you have shown a watching world that we are a united people, pledged to maintaining a political system which guarantees individual liberty to a greater degree than any other. And I thank you and your people for all your help in maintaining the continuity which is the bulwark of our republic. The business of our nation goes forward. These United States are confronted with an economic affliction of great proportions. We suffer from the longest and one of the worst sustained inflations in our national history. It distorts our economic decisions, penalizes thrift, and crushes the struggling young and the fixed-income elderly alike. It threatens to shatter the lives of millions of our people. Idle industries have cast workers into unemployment, human misery, and personal indignity. Those who do work are denied a fair return for their labor by a tax system which penalizes successful achievement and keeps us from maintaining full productivity. But great as our tax burden is, it has not kept pace with public spending. For decades, we have piled deficit upon deficit, mortgaging our future and our children's future for the temporary convenience of the present. To continue this long trend is to guarantee tremendous social, cultural, political, and economic upheavals. You and I, as individuals, can, by borrowing, live beyond our means, but for only a limited period of time. Why then should we think that collectively, as a nation, we're not bound by that same limitation? We must act today in order to preserve tomorrow. And let there be no misunderstanding. We're going to begin to act beginning today. The economic ills we suffer have come upon us over several decades. They will not go away in days, weeks, or months, but they will go away. They will go away because we, as Americans, have the capacity now, as we've had in the past, to do whatever needs to be done to preserve this last and greatest bastion of freedom. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else? All of us together, in and out of government, must bear the burden. The solutions we seek must be equitable, with no one group singled out to pay a higher price. We hear much of special interest groups. Well, our concern must be for a special interest group that has been too long neglected. It knows no sectional boundaries or ethnic and racial divisions, and it crosses political party lines. It is made up of men and women who raise our food, patrol our streets, man our mines and factories, teach our children, keep our homes, and heal us when we're sick. Professionals, industrialists, shopkeepers, clerks, cabbies, and truck drivers. They are, in short, we the people. This breed called Americans. Well, this administration's objective will be a healthy, vigorous, growing economy that provides equal opportunities for all Americans with no barriers born of bigotry or discrimination. Putting America back to work means putting all Americans back to work. Ending inflation means freeing all Americans from the terror of runaway living costs. All must share in the productive work of this new beginning, and all must share in the bounty of a revived economy. With the idealism and fair play which are the core of our system and our strength, we can have a strong and prosperous America at peace with itself and the world. So as we begin, let us take inventory. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed. It is my intention to curb the size and influence of the federal establishment and to demand recognition of the distinction between the powers granted to the federal government and those reserved to the states or to the people. All of us need to be reminded that the federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government. Now, so there will be no misunderstanding, it's not my intention to do away with government. It is rather to make it work with us, not over us, to stand by our side, not ride on our back. Government can and must provide opportunity, not smother it, foster productivity, not stifle it. If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. It is no coincidence that our present troubles parallel and are proportionate to the intervention and intrusion in our lives that result from unnecessary and excessive growth of government. It is time for us to realize that we're too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. We're not, as some would have us believe, doomed to an inevitable decline. I do not believe in a fate that will fall on us no matter what we do. I do believe in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing. So with all the creative energy at our command, let us begin an era of national renewal. Let us renew our determination, our courage, and our strength. And let us renew our faith and our hope. We have every right to dream heroic dreams. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. You can see heroes every day going in and out of factory gates. Others, a handful in number, produce enough food to feed all of us and then the world beyond. You meet heroes across a counter, and they're on both sides of that counter. There are entrepreneurs with faith in themselves and faith in an idea who create new jobs, new wealth, and opportunity. They're individuals and families who take taxes, support the government, and whose voluntary gifts support church, charity, culture, art, and education. Their patriotism is quiet but deep. Their values sustain our national life. Now, I have used the words they and their in speaking of these heroes. I could say you and your, because I'm addressing the heroes of whom I speak, you, the citizens of this blessed land. Your dreams, your hopes, your goals are going to be the dreams, the hopes, and the goals of this administration, so help me God. We shall reflect the compassion that is so much a part of your makeup. How can we love our country and not love our countrymen? And loving them, reach out a hand when they fall, heal them when they're sick, and provide opportunity to make them self-sufficient so they will be equal in fact and not just in theory. Can we solve the problems confronting us? Well, the answer is an unequivocal and emphatic yes. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, I did not take the oath I've just taken with the intention of presiding over the dissolution of the world's strongest economy. In the days ahead, I will propose removing the roadblocks that have slowed our economy and reduced productivity. Steps will be taken aimed at restoring the balance between the various levels of government. Progress may be slow, measured in inches and feet, not miles, but we will progress. It is time to reawaken this industrial giant, to get government back within its means, and to lighten our punitive tax burden. And these will be our first priorities, and on these principles there will be no compromise. On the eve of our struggle for independence, a man who might have been one of the greatest among the founding fathers, Dr. Joseph Warren, president of the Massachusetts Congress, said to his fellow Americans, "Our country is in danger, but not to be despaired of. On you depend the fortunes of America. You are to decide the important question upon which rests the happiness and the liberty of millions yet unborn. Act worthy of yourselves." Well, I believe we, the Americans of today, are ready to act worthy of ourselves, ready to do what must be done to ensure happiness and liberty for ourselves, our children, and our children's children. And as we renew ourselves here in our own land, we will be seen as having greater strength throughout the world. We will again be the exemplar of freedom and a beacon of hope for those who do not now have freedom. To those neighbors and allies who share our freedom, we will strengthen our historic ties and assure them of our support and firm commitment. We will match loyalty with loyalty. We will strive for mutually beneficial relations. We will not use our friendship to impose on their sovereignty, for our own sovereignty is not for sale. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it, now or ever. Our forbearance should never be misunderstood. Our reluctance for conflict should not be misjudged as a failure of will. When action is required to preserve our national security, we will act. We will maintain sufficient strength to prevail if need be, knowing that if we do so, we have the best chance of never having to use that strength. Above all, we must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. I'm told that tens of thousands of prayer meetings are being held on this day. And for that, I'm deeply grateful. We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free. It would be fitting and good, I think, if on each inaugural day in future years, it should be declared a day of prayer. This is the first time in our history that this ceremony has been held, as you've been told, on this west front of the Capitol. Standing here, one faces a magnificent vista opening up on this city's special beauty and history. At the end of this open mall are those shrines to the giants on whose shoulders we stand. Directly in front of me, the monument to a monumental man, George Washington, father of our country, a man of humility who came to greatness reluctantly. He led America out of revolutionary victory into infant nationhood. Off to one side, the stately memorial to Thomas Jefferson, the Declaration of Independence flames with his eloquence. And then beyond the reflecting pool, the dignified columns of the Lincoln Memorial. Whoever would understand in his heart the meaning of America will find it in the life of Abraham Lincoln. Beyond those monuments to heroism is the Potomac River, and on the far shore, the sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David. They add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, "My Pledge," he had written these words: "America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone." The crisis we're facing today does not require of us the kind of sacrifice that Martin Treptow and so many thousands of others were called upon to make. It does require, however, our best effort and our willingness to believe in ourselves and to believe in our capacity to perform great deeds, to believe that together, with God's help, we can and will resolve the problems which now confront us. And after all, why shouldn't we believe that? We are Americans. God bless you and thank you. Thank you very much.
President Reagan has concluded now the inaugural address, ended on a very emotional note. But he began, after paying a gracious tribute to President Carter, to move immediately into the basic themes of the campaign that led him to the White House. He began talking about inflation, unemployment, federal spending, and made it clear that he intends to make a sea change,
Will you remain standing, please? The Joint Congressional Committee on the Inauguration and all the members of the United States Congress are honored that you have come here for this great occasion today. And as we close now with the benediction offered by Reverend Mumma, that will be followed by the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner by Mrs. Juanita Booker.
May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you peace, both now and forevermore. Amen.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched, it was so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glares, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flags was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land and all the free, and the home of the
Mrs. Juanita Booker, who is not a professional singer, but attracted the attention of candidate Reagan, who is now embracing her as president during a campaign appearance. She sang at 3 fundraising events during his campaign, and he invited her to come to Washington to sing at this ceremony today.
Will you greet once more our president and Mrs. Reagan? Thank you.
All right, that concludes the official ceremonies. We have a new President of the United States. And he's giving a hail to the chief. We're going to go now to our correspondent down there on the platform, Sam Donaldson. Come in, Sam.
Well, Frank, former President Carter has just left. He is going immediately, we understand, to Andrews Air Force Base, then to Georgia. And after a few hours there, he will depart for Germany to greet the hostages as the official representative of this country, so designated by President Reagan. You'll recall that yesterday, Governor Reagan called President Carter and asked him to do this, and President Carter accepted it. Now, as the former president, he will, in fact, do that after he's gone to Georgia. Here comes President Reagan, beaming with his wife, Nancy, down the aisle, down the aisle. They're free, Mr. President. They're free, Mr. President. We've had press reports that they're free. We've had press reports. What do you have to say about that? What do you have to say, sir?
There's only one thing to say. Thank God.
Thank God, he said. Thank God, said President Reagan, which I suppose reflects the view that all of us feel, Frank.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you very much. That certainly was welcome news to him. I couldn't hear all of his answer, but I did hear the thank God. We have a report, too, from the United Press International that states flatly Iran has freed the 52 American hostages on the 444th day of captivity. We are awaiting for confirmation that we can provide our independent sources before we state that to you as a definitive fact, but I think it is safe to say that we've had these press reports. All right, now let's bring in Ted Koppel, who's been watching this situation, the hostage crisis, very closely. Ted?
All right, Frank, let me begin by injecting at least a slight note of caution here, and I think we have to do that because we cannot state, based on our own information, categorically that the hostages are free. Indeed, Peter Jennings, with whom we've been in touch in Frankfurt and who himself has been in touch with Tehran, is unable to confirm that independently. In fact, I'm just being told, I understand that Peter is on the line with us right now. Peter, please bring us up to date on what you have been able to confirm.
Well, Ted, I can just tell you at the outset that those categorical statements of the United Press and the Associated Press are being very dramatically contradicted by the Iranian news agency itself, Pars, which first said they would be released just about now, or perhaps within the last 30 minutes, and now has said on Tehran radio they have not been released. We should point out that the Associated Press and UPI, not to denigrate them in any way, but are not based in Iran. The only agency there is the Reuters, the British news agency. They did say a short while ago that one of the aircraft had taxied to the end of the runway, but there is no indication of a takeoff. And we have also had, just to add to the confusion, two conflicting reports. One that suggests the hostages may in fact have left Tehran airport to go back to some other location. The confusion reigns, Ted.
Well, just to add to that confusion, Peter, we also have a report from Athens Control Tower. They are reporting that a plane from Iran is due to land at Athens at 3 o'clock. It should be noted that a plane is believed to have taken off from Tehran some hours ago and could be in Athens at that time, but that may be with the baggage. Certainly no confirmation that the hostages are on that plane. So just to wrap up everything as best we can at the moment, a number of conflicting reports that suggest the hostages have taken off, but we do not yet have independent confirmation of that, and indeed the Pars news agency in Tehran itself is saying that the hostages have not yet left Iran. Frank, back to you on Capitol Hill.
All right, Ted, thank you very much, and thank you too, Peter. It is proper and sobering, of course, to inject that note of caution, as Peter so usefully did. Here is the Law Library. Just to repeat once again, we are not able to confirm from our own sources these wire service stories that the hostages have in fact taken off from Tehran, and we're not going to make that kind of a statement until we know for sure that it has actually happened. The Law Library entrance to the Capitol, we're going to go to Ann Compton, who is there now. President Carter will be coming out very shortly.
Frank, he is just now coming out the door. We will try to get his attention. They have been fixing the phone in his car to make sure that he can communicate on the way to the airport. He moving with a great group of aides around him. We are kept some distance from him, but the mobile car, Vice President Mondale now giving a thumbs-up signal, but with all the joy in that group right now, there's no doubt a touch of sadness. The president will be going out to Andrews Air Force Base, former president. Mr. Vice President, what do you hear on the hostages? Vice President Mondale getting in the car, and neither of them caring to come on over to talk to us. Again, the car in this unmarked limousine, no longer one of the presidential designate. This is an armored limousine, but with a regular civilian license plate. The two couples in the car on their way. Perhaps, Frank, at this point, you know better than we where he is headed now, whether to the airport, whether onto planes, whether to Germany, and just what the status is. President Carter has chosen not to take this moment to overshadow President Reagan. Frank?
Thank you, Ann. I actually am unable to say. I believe that Sam Donaldson reported a while ago that all being well, with confirmation of the hostage release, that the former president would go to Andrews, get on the plane, and go off to Germany to greet them. But we don't have that kind of confirmation as yet, and it is for certain that he will not head for Germany until he knows for sure they are out of Iranian airspace and will be eventually making their way to Germany after possibly a stop in some other capital, maybe Algiers or wherever they're going. Well, there's the former president's motorcade moving out of the East Capitol Plaza now, heading for Andrews Air Force Base. I wonder if we can locate Sam, if he's still around. Here's Andrews Air Force Base. The center plane you see there is the one that will carry the hostage team, including Secretary of State Cyrus Vance. I shouldn't say hostage team, but they're the people who will actually go there. Now let's go back once again to our bureau and Ted Koppel. Ted?
All right, Frank, once again, a report from, this time, the Associated Press saying that an Algerian 727 jetliner carrying the 52 American hostages took off today from Tehran's Mehrabad airport. This time, significantly, they are quoting the Iranian news agency Pars. And there is another report here saying that the West German embassy in Tehran quoted Tehran radio as saying that the U.S. hostages had flown out of Tehran. One other note on former President Carter's plans. It is my understanding that he is going to fly, first of all, to Plains, Georgia, where he will spend at least a couple of hours. Then he would fly back here to Washington, and from Andrews Air Force Base, he would then fly on to Germany. But that, of course, is all contingent upon getting the final and the official word that the hostages have been flown out. We're in one of these curious, well, we're in a transitional period. Even though the official transition of power has taken place, something less than the official or orderly transition has taken place at the State Department and at the White House, and there is still a little bit of confusion at both those centers of power. I understand now that Peter Jennings is standing by again in Frankfurt. Peter, what is the latest word you have?
Well, Ted, just to tell you that we, too, have just recently been talking to Tehran within the last couple of minutes. They are also quoting Pars, saying that the hostages took off a few minutes ago, which brings me back to the thought you offered some many minutes ago that perhaps there was some decision made to wait, if these reports are correct, until Ronald Reagan, as you can now see in your picture with his wife Nancy, was president.
It certainly does look that way, doesn't it? I mean, it's almost beyond belief that there could be such a coincidence of timing that they actually wait until the new president has delivered his inaugural address, and then just by coincidence the plane would leave. But it now appears that that timing was just that precise, that almost within minutes after the conclusion of President Reagan's inaugural address, that the plane then actually took off. At the moment, as you can see, Jim Brady, who is the new press secretary, is briefing the president. Frank?
Yes, thank you, Ted. They are in a reception room now, where they will pause briefly before actually going into the luncheon in the statuary hall. The president, as you said, has just been talked to by Jim Brady, who is the new White House press secretary. Mrs. Reagan talking there with the wife of Senator Howard Baker, and greeting other friends. The president and the first lady will stay in this reception room for a while before going into the luncheon. And even before that, however, the president will go into another room where he will sign nominations for the members of his cabinet. That will be his first official act as president. Well, our coverage of Inauguration 81 will continue after this from our local stations.
The hostages on their way home. Stay with ABC News for complete coverage.
They guarantee it. It's great.
H&R Block Report. Our guarantee.
They guarantee that if there's any problem, they will go with you. And they will help you out.
If the IRS calls you in, we'll go with you free. Not as a legal representative, but to explain how your taxes were prepared.
When it comes to preparing taxes, H&R Block, they're the best. They're great. They're terrific.
Come to H&R Block. We'll make the tax laws work for you.
Lamps, lamps, and more lamps. You'll be dazzled by a great selection of lamps at K&T Lamp and Shade at 309 Peabody. There are lamps for every room, for every decor, and at K&T you save up to 50% on every purchase. K&T even offers a complete repair service for any of your lamps that may be in need of repair. Remember, at K&T you save up to 50% on the state's biggest selection of lamps and shades. K&T Lamp and Shade, 309 Peabody in Nashville.
You're watching WNGE-TV Channel 2, Nashville.
ABC News live coverage of Inauguration 81 continues. This portion brought to you by the General Foods family of fine products, pleasing you and your family for over 50 years. Products like Maxwell House, Post Cereals, and Kool-Aid Mix.
Good afternoon once again. On Inauguration Day from the Capitol, we have a new president. President Reagan has taken the oath of office. We're going to bring you up to date on the Iranian story, the hostage crisis. As Ted Koppel reported a moment ago, we have word from Tehran radio, heard in West Germany, that the hostages plane has taken off. And also the AP is quoting an Iranian, the Iranian Pars news agency, as saying that they have taken off. Certainly that is the feeling here, anyway, among these people on the platform and in the Capitol, that it has actually happened. Pray God that it has. Now we're going to go to inside to the rotunda to our correspondent, Britt Hume, who is with Speaker Tip O'Neill. Britt?
Thank you, Frank. Mr. Speaker, both our national news agencies, UPI and AP, and the Iranian news agencies as well, have now reported that hostages are, in fact, in the air. Does that square with your understanding after you rode up here with the president?
Well, we were riding up. It had to be about 11:30, I would say, when the telephone rang in the car and the president took the call. And then he announced to the president-elect at that time, Ronald Reagan, that within 15 minutes that the planes would be leaving Tehran and they would be flying to Turkey, I believe. And from there to, I guess, over Turkey to Athens, Greece, where the planes would be refueling before going to Germany. And he said in the conversation of that he had the intentions himself of later on this afternoon of greeting the hostages in Germany.
Well, that would have made it about 45 minutes to an hour or so.
Oh, I would say about an hour ago, yes.
What was your understanding about how long it would take them to get out of the airspace there?
About an hour, 600 miles, they figured they were inside of Iran property. And it would take them about an hour to get out.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, I must ask you, you heard the speech. What did you make of the Mr. Reagan speech?
Well, I have to say, Brett, I was very impressed with everything. This morning at the White House, when the Reagans came in and met the Carters, you know, it was the vanquished and the winner, and yet there was an affable feeling, friendliness. It's just great that the transition can go the way it does. There was no animosity whatsoever. There was a friendly feeling and a great spirit there. We rode down together, and for the most part, we talked about the hostages or that telephone conversation, and remarked about the crowds that were there, and who were the fellows in the red jackets, and we presume they were Boy Scouts who were acting as ushers along the line. Nothing really of international consequence other than the fact that we were talking about the hostages. The president's speech was very simplistic. I think he spoke to a constituency of America who really put him where he is, and I think his remarks were no doubt pleasing to him. He won't compromise, but politics is the art of compromise, so that was a very enjoyable day.
Thank you very much. Frank?
Okay, thank you very much, Britt and Speaker O'Neill. We're going to go right now to Ted Koppel downtown with more word on the hostages. Ted?
All right, Frank, if it's possible for this diverse nation of 226 million to have unanimity on anything, perhaps the time is now to give a unanimous hallelujah. And for the reason for that, let's go immediately to Peter Jennings in Frankfurt.
Ted, hallelujah indeed. Behzad Nabavi, the chief Iranian negotiator, has just confirmed that the Algerian aircraft carrying the hostages have left Tehran, and so does Iran's Berabad airport tower, confirming the American hostages finally are on their way. We don't know where they're going just yet. We hope Algiers. We've had some reports there may be a refueling stop at Ankara in Turkey or in Damascus. But it's ironic that I'm looking on at the moment at the Armed Forces television in Germany, and there's that big sign on the hospital at Wiesbaden saying, "Welcome back."
Peter,
that it should be correct, I must tell you, Ted, that Nabavi has said it, the Pars news agency has said it, the Tehran Tower has said it. Unless there is the most ultimate manipulation, it has finally happened.
Peter, do you know precisely when they left? Did you get any indication from the...
No, Ted, I can tell you, we're just talking within minutes. I mean, that news has come to us within the last 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes at the most. And does it matter? The plane carrying them left, quoting Nabavi, quoting the Pars news agency. It doesn't come any more official, Ted, at this point.
All right, you're quite right, Peter. It really doesn't matter as long as they're airborne. As you heard Speaker O'Neill say a few moments ago, it's about 600 miles from 50 to 60 minutes to get them out of Iranian airspace. It is roughly a 3,000-mile trip to Algiers, if in fact that is where they are going. That would take them about 5 hours. So if they left within the last few minutes, sometime around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock this afternoon, they should be landing in Algeria. We can't give it to you any harder than that. The hostages are on their way home. Frank?
Thank you, Ted. Thank you. I guess they're still in Iranian airspace, and I would deduct, although, as Peter Jennings rightfully pointed out, what difference does it make now, that they probably left, well, who knows whether they left during the Carter administration or during the Reagan administration. It's hard to say, and we probably might not know for some time. The Speaker indicated that the telephone message that the President received in the car while riding up here with Governor Reagan, then Governor Reagan, indicated that they were going to fly to Athens and refuel, and then they said go on to Germany. But we can't really be sure that that is the precise route they'll follow. Anyway, we'll keep a very close watch on it. Our coverage of Inauguration 81 continues in a moment.
I hate to admit it, but these pork chops are better than mine. They're crispier, but tender and juicy. The seasoning. How'd Mary get these pork chops so scrumptious?
Ask Mommy. It's new oven fry coating for pork.
New oven fry?
Lets me fry pork chops in the oven with a deliciously different flavor.
Tender. Oh, extra crispy.
Tastes great.
Oven fry for pork. It's new.
Hey, no. Say 5.
Oh, it's coming along nicely, June.
Yeah, but not for me. My doctor says too much caffeine makes me edgy.
Well, why not try Sanka brand decaffeinated coffee?
I'll take real coffee.
Sanka brand's 100% real coffee. You'll love it.
I do.
June, the show is a big hit.
Well, I'm really hitting it off with Sanka brand.
Sanka brand. Enjoy your coffee and enjoy yourself.
Tuesday, the Fawn shows Potsy the Roast.
You drive me wild.
But he can't take the competition on Happy Days. Then there's trouble in paradise when an earthquake shakes up Laverne and Shirley.
Put us in our own strength.
Jack's reputation with the ladies forces him undercover.
What is it about me?
I don't know, but now I've got to find out.
Three's Company. Then Muriel's old boyfriend hits on Jackie.
Where'd you find this house?
And it's too close for comfort.
Tonight starting at 8, 7 Central and Mountain on ABC.
Well, the sun has appropriately enough come out now and begun to shine once again on this beautiful capital city. I guess that's an indication of how the country feels, too, not merely about the inauguration of the new president, but about the glorious news that the American hostages on their 444th day of imprisonment, of kidnapping, have finally been released. And as Peter Jennings and Ted Koppel have reported a short while ago, they are on their way out of Iranian airspace. The Algerian planes have taken off with them, and sometime later on today we're going to get a glimpse of them landing somewhere, and we'll know then much more about them. But the major news, the important thing here, is that they're free, they're gone. Thank God. Now, I want to turn to our two correspondents who are with me, our guests in the booth here, George Will and Sander Van Oker. Both of them have been observing and studying the import of the President's inaugural address. I must say to you, gentlemen, that I thought after the very gracious tribute to President Carter for his aid in the transition and for his service to the nation, that Ronald Reagan sounded very much like the candidate all over again. He went right into his basic political themes that carried him here. Isn't that true?
I think that's right. I think he thinks he won the election on that, and that he has a mandate, and that 44 states are out there watching to make sure that he's true to this. Conservatives always have a feeling that they're going to be betrayed at the last moment by
They usually are.
That's why. And I think he re-inoculated 44 states today with pure Reaganism. It's said that he wrote this with his own hand on a long sheet of paper, such as you're using, Frank, on a flight to California, and I believe it. That was pure Reaganism. I think, in a way, he went across the country all fall saying, and this is one of a quote that he used often, the spirit of America is still there, ready to blaze into life. He believes that the kindling is dry, the country's basically healthy. It's an anti-malaise speech, frankly. He's saying the president got it wrong. It's a healthy country. And what we need to do is give it some oxygen by lifting the blanket of government.
I don't think the speech was as good as the acceptance speech in Detroit, but most inaugural addresses aren't very good. George and I were agreeing before that you've had about four. Jefferson's first, Lincoln's second, FDR's first, John F. Kennedy's first and only. The thing with Ronald Reagan, though, is this is a campaign speech, but you have to observe with Ronald Reagan the difference between rhetoric and what he actually does. Now, he believes this, absolutely. A man doesn't get to be 70 years old and not believe, doesn't know who he is. But in California, everybody who watched him in action out there heard what he said and saw what he did. Liberal abortion law, far-reaching environmental bill, wasn't going to go for withholding, eventually did, raised taxes. It's the kind of speech he believes in, but as everybody who comes to Washington observes, the kind of speech you make up there is quite different than when you're sitting in the White House. Kennedy used to say, sometimes he'd bore us to tears with this, that the Congress looks a good deal more powerful when you're sitting at that end of Pennsylvania Avenue than when you're sitting in it. And I think that it's going to be a little more hard to dismantle the government's hold on our lives than he may imagine.
George,
the great irony is that this is an activist government speech, as any conservative government coming in has to be one that says we have a lot of work to do. We have to use the powers of government. I was struck by the line where he says we must act today in order to preserve tomorrow, and let there be no misunderstanding, we are going to act beginning today. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some presidential orders on regulations coming out of the White House today. And he says from time to time we have been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed. This is a managerial government of activists who think they have a big agenda of things to do.
Well, isn't there somewhat of a contradiction in that, George? I mean, his chief purpose seems to be to come in and dismantle the government. Dismantle is too strong a term, I know, but he does say, how many times have we heard him in the campaign? Government is not the solution, it's the problem. And the crowd would roar.
Oh, but Frank,
he said it today.
That's his political genius. It was with the political genius of his great idol, Franklin D. Roosevelt, to be all things to all men. And George is absolutely right. He is an activist conservative. All I'm arguing is when he comes to grip with that bureaucracy and the vested interest that a lot of people in this country, including big business, big labor, I sound like George Romney, all have in keeping the government to aid them. In other words, everybody's against all government programs except those that immediately benefit them. And Ronald Reagan, within 48 hours, is going to find out who they are.
I remembered and recalled as he was giving that speech and talking about government being the problem and not the solution, that at least during the '76 campaign, he used to have one of his applause lines was after denouncing the evils of OSHA, the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, and he would pick out some ludicrous thing requiring, 10 restrooms for 2 employees or something like that, you know. And he would then say that we're going to change all that when we get to the White House, and oh, there will be the screams of pain from the bureaucrats in Washington with their carpeted anterooms. And I often wondered, what did his people in Sacramento have? Linoleum on the floor?
No, they didn't wear hair shirts on the outside out there. But you know, the one thing about Ronald Reagan is, he is the oldest president to be sworn into office, and he knows who he is, and that's not a cliche. If you go back 50 years to the presidents we've had, many of them have not known who they were as human beings. FDR did. You want me to stop?
I do, Sandy, and thank you very much. You're very gracious, because we have more information from Ted Koppel, and I don't want to delay that at all. Ted?
Into, except, I guess my mic wasn't on. I'm in a position where I literally don't know what I'm leading into, except that I know that Peter Jennings has it. So let's go without further ado to Frankfurt and Peter.
Ted, we do have some further information, which I must tell you at the outset does confirm the suspicion you have carried in your breast for so long. The official news agency in Tehran PARS has just announced that at 1 minute past 9 Tehran time, 1 minute after Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president, a first aircraft carrying the Algerian doctors left Tehran airport. At 2 minutes after 9, a second aircraft left carrying the Algerian delegation. And at 3 minutes past 9 Tehran time, 3 minutes after Ronald Reagan became president, an aircraft carrying the hostages left Tehran airport. They were escorted through Iranian airspace as far as we know, but they are escorted at the moment by Iranian American-built F-4 Phantom.
Peter, we should also point out that there is an 8.5-hour time difference, so if you're thinking that that happened just after noon, it did not.
You're right, Ted.
The point that you're making, of course, is that it was just after President Reagan completed his inaugural address. It would have been at about 12:32, 12:33, and they were doing it deliberately. Frank, back to you on Capitol Hill.
What an incredible thing, Ted, that it happened just moments after the Carter administration passed from power and the Reagan people took over. The president, it's going to take a while to get these things sorted out. The former president has arrived at Andrews Air Force Base. You see the honor guard lined up there. There are rather elaborate and appropriate departure ceremonies scheduled for him. He will, we believe, fly to Germany to see the hostages. There had been some confusion about that earlier. There may still be, as far as I'm concerned, frankly. But our correspondent, Tom Gerald, is at Andrews, and maybe you can shed some light on that. Tom, where is he going, to Plains or to Germany?
Frank, we believe he is going to Plains, but everything has been very much up in the air here. We've heard he's going first to Plains, then return here tonight, perhaps, and go to Germany. We do know that the aircraft with Cy Vance, who is traveling to Frankfurt, has pulled away. They rushed Mr. Vance away from the VIP receiving line here with great urgency, and we believe he is boarding the aircraft that will take the special team of about 30 specialists to Germany to examine and debrief the hostages. Here is the former president, the former first lady. His staff and cabinet are here, his friends are here, and he is now taking a reviewing stand. Nearby is the honor guard, the bands, and they'll be sending him off to Plains momentarily. Vice President and Mrs. Mondale sharing the reviewing stand. .21-gun salute for the former chief executive. See Rosalind standing facing the honor guard here at Andrews Air Force Base.
And Tom, I'm seeing on another monitor his successor in a room in the Capitol preparing to sign the first official document. Here is President Reagan.
I'm happy to be taking this action in this historic room, a sign of what I hope will be full cooperation between Congress and the executive branch. This is a memorandum for the heads of executive departments and agencies, and then, of course, will be implemented by the Office of Management and Budget.
He's signing the nominations for his cabinet officers, and it's just noteworthy to point out as you watch him affix his signature, he's signing at a table, I believe, that was first used by Abraham Lincoln. Now, I think we We have seen him sign his first official document as president. Let's go back on out to Andrews Air Force Base, where former President Carter is preparing to get aboard Air Force One, not for the merely traditional flight home, but for the long journey that apparently will take him on to Germany and back. Yes, Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
Frank, President Carter is now reviewing the troops, the honor guard assembled here, but also in some distance away, which you can't see too clearly on camera, is the aircraft with former Secretary of State Cy Vance and a team of approximately 30 medical specialists who are about to leave to go to Frankfurt, Germany for the debriefing of the American hostages. Mr. Carter here receiving a formal send-off, a 21-gun salute first for the former chief executive, and now he is reviewing the troops. His cabinet, his senior staff, they're all here, and as they arrived here, we could tell that they knew what we learned moments later, that the hostages had indeed been freed. There was no sadness on their faces as they passed us here just a few moments ago. They were smiling because they had finally received the word that it was indeed a fact.
And what a great burden is lifted not only from the shoulders of Jimmy Carter, but from Ronald Reagan as well, who does not have to begin his presidency with this plague hanging over him, so to speak. I suspect it will be some time before the first order of the government of the United States is to restore normal, friendly relations with the Islamic Republic of Iran. I don't think that will be his first order of business. Do you, George?
Sure.
How many times has he received similar salutes in the past 4 years? On and off that plane at airports all over the globe. Barbara, have any thoughts on this as the band strikes up?
Well, Frank, somewhat different thoughts. Just a moment or two ago, I telephoned Louisa Kennedy, who is the wife of now ex-hostage Moorhead Kennedy. And she is here in Washington at the State Department. She's been one of the spokesmen for the hostages' wives. And I said, Louisa, hallelujah, congratulations. And she said, for what? Has it happened yet? And I said, yes, it has. And we told her the news. Evidently, they weren't watching television, and the State Department had not told them. And this was how she got the news, was going to give it to the other wives, that her husband and the other husbands and sons were freed. She's going to have a fast press conference, and then we hope, if there is some time, and if she can collect her thoughts, come over here. She almost seemed in a daze. She keeps saying, I can't believe it, I can't believe it. And it was, I must say, very moving to us to be able to say, yes, it is so. Frank?
Thank you, Barbara.
President Carter
what's happening there?
Frank has moved over to see the friends who have come to see him off. He has now very much had the farewell ceremony, and he is now saying some personal goodbyes to the lesser staff members and close personal friends that he has developed here in Washington during his 4-year stay. They've been kept behind the ropes out in front. There's a long red carpet where the official friends and dignitaries are waiting to send him off. But it feels almost like a campaign stop. The president, former first lady, former Vice President Mondale waving, smiling. They're in a good mood. There's no feeling here of being downcast or outcast. They are in a very upbeat mood, smiling, shaking hands, and they're glad to see these faces of people who have come to help ease this psychological transition for any chief executive.
George, you have a comment to make as we watch the president say goodbye to his staff members and friends who've come out to see him?
Well, it's nice symbolism because he began, as all, I guess, presidential candidates begin, with a very small staff, very loyal to him, and they're loyal at the end, and that's the normal cycle of politics. It's also appropriate and very nice that the Mondales are there, because one of the contributions that Jimmy Carter has made to American government, a lasting improvement, is to dignify the office of the vice presidency. Lord knows the president needs all the help he can get, and Mondale has been a great help to him. Finally, it's very interesting that presidents really do have to go, in a sense. They can't stay around the city, even though in some ways it could be their home. It was never much of a home for Jimmy Carter. Woodrow Wilson said it must have been the last president to stay in Washington. He was a sick and
broken man. An invalid. I don't mean to be irreverent, but the one thing that the presidents really miss is Air Force One. There is something about having that at your command that is unmatchable in any other kind of experience that you're going to have. And presidents think they can run the country from it. Some try. And one thing it didn't work for Mr. Carter very well as was a campaign prop during the campaign. It just didn't invoke the symbolism it was supposed to.
But it is there's a rejuvenating process about it. A president can sit here and open the front page of the paper every day and see what a villain he is. He turns to the editorial page, and Herblock is had at him, and then he goes off. Oh, look at this. Then he goes off to a foreign land, or even out into the country, and he's received with all the pomp, ceremony. It's a reminder that he's president.
That's part of the problem, Frank.
Well, maybe.
They ought to read the editorial pages and look at Herblock cartoons a bit more. Frank, one of the things that occurs to me is he's
here
getting
at Andrews
up...
Air Force Base, the lady who has just given a very warm embrace to President Carter is Anita Schaefer. Anita Schaefer is the wife of one of the hostages, and that certainly was one of the highlights.